it is Lee here from the Abolitionist Teacher, and I am gonna be talking about lessons that I learned returning back to third grade.
Waving my hand just to say hello with the giants.
So today's video is my attempt at reviving my very small YouTube channel. So if you like this video, like and subscribe. I am trying to get a couple more content out there for you guys. You know, there's always the website you can check out, but I really want to start bringing some of those amazing ideas and things to YouTube for you. So if you like this video, like and subscribe. And then if you are a blog follower and you want to see some ideas more in this sphere with the video, comment below so that I know what kind of content you want to see. So I'm going to be honest with you. When I first found out last year at the end of the school year that I was going to be moving from second grade to third grade, I was not excited. And especially because I was moving from teaching all subjects, second grade self-contained, teaching reading, math, science, social studies, all in one classroom with one set of students, to now moving to third grade where I was going to be with a teaching partner and I was only going to be teaching math and science. And instead of only having 18 students, I was going to have 36. And I was not excited. Even though I had taught third grade previously, about 10 years ago, I did teach third grade. But I also felt nervous and a little apprehensive because of the math aspect. I have spent the better part of the last 5 or 6, maybe even 7 years, literally living literacy instruction, especially in the primary grades. Eat, sleep, breathe. I have been doing research on the science of reading best practices, learning new curriculum that supports science of reading best practices. Through my master's degree in instructional design, I really started to learn more about the science of writing and what science tells us about good writing instruction, and then I've been pouring that into products for you guys to use in your classrooms. And then even when I went back to teaching after being off for a little bit after having my daughter, and I came back in as a interventionist in the readings film. I was the reading interventionist. And then once I went back into the second grade classroom, I really was really leaned more into that phonics and reading and writing part. So then to have to switch my brain into multiplication, fractions, area, perimeter, and then like all of that, and then to go into like science as its own like thing. I mean, like I said, in the primary grade, science and social studies are used to complement reading. So the fact that I was going to have to be teaching them isolated out of reading seemed strange. And so it was hard. It was hard. But I think along the way, I learned a lot about myself as a teacher, as a person, what I need, what I don't need in my life. I also learned some really strong lessons. And that's why in this video today, I want to share with you those 5 things that I learned. All right, so today's video is all about end of the year reflection. As you can see, I am in my home office. I am officially off from school. Summertime has started, and in true abolitionist teacher fashion, I have been reflecting on this past school year. And can I just say, I didn't think it was gonna be this hard. Yeah. Going back to third grade after 10 years away was so much harder than I really thought it was going to be. Not that I had unnecessary, confidence, but I just thought I would be it would just be easier for me to fall into the role. And yet I felt like this year was one of the hardest, other than the year I taught kindergarten and 5th grade. That was also a pretty hard year. But this one for sure is probably the second hardest year for me. Okay, so before we get into some of those lessons learned, I just want to talk to you a little bit about some of the reflections that I did at the end of the school year. So whenever a school year ends, I've been doing an end of the year reflection for literally, this was my 18th year. I've been doing it for probably 17 of those 18 years. Like when the school year ends and everything is still fresh, I like to write down what went well, what did I like that I did, what didn't do so hot, and then also I like to kind of make a mental plan of things that I want to fix in the new school year. So I have those here in my lesson plan book that I used this school year. For the first time ever, I used a paper planner instead of a digital one. And if you want to hear a video more about that switch, let me know in the comments. But at the end of the year, I wrote down just a couple things, and I'm just going to share them with you because maybe you had the same reflections. So I always start with the good because I like to pat myself on the back. So some of the good things that happened this school year, even though it was very rough, was number one, I worked really hard to meet my students where they were at. I did not make any assumptions about their learning, and because I had previously taught second grade with the same group of students, I didn't loop with my class, but I knew a lot of the kids that were in both sessions, my morning block and my afternoon block, and I did have some of my foreigner students. I understood where they were leaving off in the second grade curriculum, as well as like possibly even the first grade. So I really think this school year I did a great job of focusing in on where students were at, meeting them there, and then bringing them into that third grade standard. And I think that that only comes when you have taught different grade levels. So if at any moment you are upset that your principal is moving you, think of it as a blessing because it will help you, because I was able to kind of pull in the fact that I had taught second grade to help with my third graders, even though you would think, no, third grade. Well, yeah, but you got to know where they're at. So that was something I did really well this school year. Okay. The other thing that I was pretty proud of for my, considering it's been a hot second since I was in third grade and I forgot how intense the pacing could be. And I got a lot of slack from my team about my pacing. I'm going to tell you right now, I think it was a win. My team did not. So maybe this is a hot take, but I think I did a really good job with my pacing. I am not the teacher who follows the curriculum map to a T. I'm very much, and I think this is my primary teacher part of me showing, I'm very much like, oh, if my students didn't understand something, I'm going to take a couple days to do it. And that is fine in the primary grades where you don't have a testing deadline. But something that my team warned me about a ton this school year was to be mindful that at the end of the year, they're going to be taking their tests and I needed to cover all the material plus time to review. And so I definitely felt like I was sometimes shoving information down their throats, but I did take some time on some, especially skills that I just noticed early on we were struggling with, and took a couple extra days, even though my team did not want me to do that. And in the end, it worked out. I was really proud of where my students were and their performances. So I was pretty proud of myself to keep that perky pace that was needed, but also give some time to make sure that students mastered things, especially if I felt like it was something that they were going to need to know really well for things that we were going to be doing later. And I think that that is very tricky. Me as a 18-year veteran, that is a tricky thing to do. And I think I did it pretty good. I'm going to give myself credit. Kudos. Next, something that I did really good with, I felt, was test scores. And I am not a data person. If you are a follower of my Instagram page or my website or anything, you know that I am just not, I enjoy looking at data and using data to guide instruction. I do enjoy that piece, but to me, testing data is just a snapshot. And by the time you're usually reviewing it, it's very stagnant. So, but with that all being said, I was really proud of how my students grew from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. And I feel like every teacher is always really proud of that growth that they see. But I feel like as someone who hadn't taught the curriculum in a very long time, wasn't necessarily familiar with the best teaching practices of it, and felt a lot of pressure to teach a certain way that so I was really excited to see my students grow this school year from really just barely being ready for third grade. A lot of my student scores at the beginning of the year were in those second grade levels, like not end of second grade levels either, like mid-year second grade, some of them first month of second grade, like they were pretty low, not all of them, but oof. So I was so proud of how well so many of them did at our end of the year assessments, because that just really, a lot of them made more than 1 year's growth. And I was just, that to me is like, tells me that what I was doing was working and it made a difference for those students, especially since here in Florida, although I was teaching math science, there is that retention law in place. And I do feel like there was just a lot of pressure to make sure, like, even though they wouldn't be retained for math, like for them to just perform and do well in math. And they did. So pat on the back for good test scores. The last thing that I thought I did really well this school year is one of the things that I came in with the mindset, which felt a little primary, but it worked out, was third grade can still be fun. I've just noticed, like, and this isn't particularly to my school, basically every school I've ever worked at, third grade is just a tough year. At least it is here in Florida because of retention laws. And it just is kind of like, there's no time for anything. We just need to get going, and and it's the, you know, it's all seriousness. And I think that's different than other grade levels where you do have a little bit more time. And I understand the point of that. But I do feel like there were spotlights in the school year where I did try to make learning fun, meaningful, make memories. And although I didn't get to do it as much as I liked, I did think that those like theme days that we did, that my partner and I did, or little hands-on activities or little fun little things that we did, like crafts and stuff that you don't necessarily see in third grade, paid off in the end, because the students not only learned, they also had fun and they remembered what we did. So I'm going to say continue that for next year, maybe even do it a little bit more. So like I said, this school year was not all sunshines and rainbows. So I spoke about my good. Let's get into the bad. Okay, so one of the things that I was not happy with this school year was my procedures. I had procedures for everything. So many procedures. And yet I felt like I was yelling at my kids for procedures they should have known all year long. Lining up properly, packing up at the end of the, block, getting papers, starting centers, every little thing. I just felt like I was constantly having to remind them. And yes, we would do the thing where you stop and practice it correctly, and I would state the procedure, or they would tell me the procedure, and it was just like, oh my God, you know it, and you're just choosing not to do it. And I felt like I was going crazy. But I know in my heart, when I think about the beginning of the school year, did I do my best in making sure that students had time to meaningfully understand procedures and to practice them? And the answer is no. We started curriculum literally the first day of school. Like legit curriculum. Because of course, pacing. And so that meant you're trying to teach procedures along with curriculum. And I think that there are really good teachers who do that. And I realized about myself, maybe I'm not the best. I am not good at that. So I think going into next year, I'm going to think about how that can look, and I'll get into my reflection on that in a second. But bad thing number one, procedures. Number two, something that I didn't really like this year it wasn't bad, but it was my math center routine. I liked what we fell into later in the school year, but I definitely want to revamp what I was doing a little bit, because I think we were doing too much. The activities the students were doing weren't always meaningful. My students were definitely not engaged, especially at the end of the school year. Probably about March, they were done. So a revamp of that. And then also I felt like I was constantly meeting with the same students every single time I sat at my teacher table. And of course with reading centers, you have certain groups, blah, blah, blah. And in math, I've always had just more of a fluidity to that. But I think now that I'm just teaching math science, I need to kind of tighten up that teacher table time a bit. And lucky for me, I am doing a book study on teaching small group math with Marcy, and I will kind of be able to use some of her suggestions to kind of tighten up that math a little bit. And then the third thing that I just felt like I did not do so hot on this school year was science. And I love teaching science, but in primary grades, science is used to build knowledge and context for reading. And I'm used to teaching science that way. I did not teach science that way this year, though. This past school year, I used science as its own special thing, like as if I was a middle school science teacher. And let me tell you, that is not how I want to teach science. I did not feel like we were doing any knowledge building. I did not feel that my students were actively engaged in what they were learning, and I did not feel that like they remembered. So I really kind of want to revamp science with more hands-on labs that I'm, not just labs that I'm demonstrating, but labs they can actually do to demonstrate science concepts that we've learned. So making just more of a point of those hands-on labs. And then also using science, and I started to do this towards the end of the school year, once I started to understand our science units, because this is the same curriculum I used in second grade, but in second grade it just are different units. But use it to help build that content vocabulary, that background knowledge, because I think we just did a lot of like, I don't know, quick, you better get this, we're moving on because we don't have time for science because science isn't tested in third grade, only math is. So there's a lot of forsaking of science for math, which is not bad, but I think we could have, I just think there's a happy medium with science where we can use it for knowledge building and also still be able to do well on a science test. So that was my good and my bad. So what do I want to do better for next year? Well, based on those bad things that I didn't think went too hot, number one, I want to revamp my math centers. So keep an eye out on here for when I talk about that. This past school year, I did a rotational thing where like we did one rotation a day, which worked out nicely. And the students, and really for time constraints, that was ideal. And then students were expected to work within their center. At the beginning of the year, I started with way too many centers posted, so like they would be in the center, like, because in second grade, we would do that and it was fine. But somehow in third grade, it wasn't fine. I really don't understand like the loss of maturity from second grade to third grade, but I think it just, here's what I'm gonna say. In second grade, we were still very much wanting to learn and please our teacher. In third grade, I found my students still wanted to please the teacher, but they were definitely more interested in talking with their friends. So having so many choices meant they were only going to do the choices with their friends, which is developmentally appropriate for a third grader, but oh my gosh, it makes you want to pull your hair out as a math teacher. So I'm going to redo a little bit there on what math centers looks like for next year. Keep an eye on this page because I will probably share about the wins and the fails of whatever I decide to come up with. Okay, next thing I want to revamp is my procedures. Now, not the procedures themselves, but how they are introduced, that classroom management piece. I really, like I said, we started teaching curriculum the first day of school, which did not leave a lot of time for procedure. And so I think I'm just gonna have to like pause science for the first week and just do procedures during science and just practice procedure the whole first week of school. I'm not sure, but we are gonna be fixing procedures because I'll be darned if I have to repeat myself a million times like I did last year. Because I just felt like we were constantly chasing and then I was constantly having them correct. Stop, that's not how you do it. Show me how you do it. Thank you for doing it correctly the second time. I wish you would have done it the first time. And just that constant cycle, no, I don't want to do that. It was such a waste of classroom time. And when you're already feeling like you're in a pressure cooker, you don't want to have to do more of that. So the goal is to get procedures down and use like the first week, possibly 2 weeks of science to do that, because of course there's no time in math. And then my last one that I want to do better at is just plan out my units a little bit better. Like actually for science, like look at the units and plan those out for more knowledge building and content vocabulary building, as well as experiments. And so just having like a hands-on kid experiment for every unit. We did experiments, but a lot of them were very much teacher guided because of time mostly. But I just want to do a few more like hands-on teacher led, but students can be doing them too, experiments. So those are my reflections. Let's jump into some of the lessons that I learned after being away from 3rd grade for 5 years. Teaching 3rd grade math science taught me a lot about myself as a teacher and what I like and what I don't like. And you would think after 18 years, I would have this teacher thing down pat. Like, oh my, I have a website that I've been writing on a website since 2012. It is now 2026. You guys, what, 12 years I've been typing out things to you guys, but like, there's still space to learn. That is what I've learned as a teacher. There's still places to learn. And I have learned 5 very big lessons, and I'm going to share them with you. Lesson number 1, and this one was probably the hardest lesson to learn, but by the end of the year, it reminded me, and that is that good teaching is still good teaching no matter what grade level you are teaching. I have taught the gambit of grades: kindergarten, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, STEAM, intervention. And the one thing that I have brought to every single position, every single class, is good basic teaching practices. And I have found that I am an effective educator because I follow the good teaching practices. So, and it doesn't matter what grade level you're in. If your pedagogy is good, you're probably going to be a good teacher in that grade level. So I really kind of got down on myself a lot this school year, feeling like I wasn't a good 3rd grade teacher because I lacked a lot of basic knowledge for teaching this 3rd grade curriculum. But I found if I just studied ahead that I could figure out a way to teach it based on best teaching practices that I've learned through the school year. For example, and this is the 2nd lesson learned, hands-on learning first, right? Okay, so many times, especially in math, we want to rush to the abstract. And I know we can fluidly move between abstract and concrete, and we're still going to be okay. But one of the things that I was really adamant about at the beginning of the school year was that I do like hands-on manipulatives for multiplication and division. That the kids had manipulatives in their hand, were moving them, putting them in groups on their desk, building arrays, lots and lots and lots of practice. Did I have time in my schedule for that? No. Did I do it anyway? Yes. Did it pay off? Yes. My students had a very strong understanding of multiplication, even though I haven't taught multiplication in years. I knew that they understood how arrays worked, and we could use arrays to help with division. And I feel like one of the biggest lessons I learned this school year is give time for the hands-on learning. It is okay to push off some of that abstract thinking to allow for that. Especially this school year, I had 36 students. 12 of those students had, instructional educational plans. They were students with IEPs. And I also had quite a few 504s. So students with like neurodivergence, with identified learning things that they need to help them learn. And I think that that tactic of moving with hands-on first did help a lot of those students who would have struggled if I hadn't done that move. Lesson number 3 kind of stung as a curriculum designer, and let me tell you what that is. And that's sometimes you gotta trust the curriculum that you were provided to do its thing. So this school year we were using Envisions Math, which is a program I was already familiar with. We had it in second grade. And when I taught second grade many moons ago, we also had Envisions. This is a new, like, updated one for the best standards. And I'm going to put that in air quotes. Because when I was looking at some of the cross things, I was like, oh, is this best? Is it? But anyway, I really, as someone who creates curriculum, I find that I tend to want to do my own thing because, like, I have a master's degree in instructional design. I need to, someone with that master's instructional design degree to trust the process of the curriculum because it was so crazy sometimes. I really feel like it was very chaotic to use. Like, we were doing multiplication, then all of a sudden in the middle of October, we were doing area and perimeter. Like, what? It just was a little chaotic, like a fever dream sometimes. And that was hard because in my mind, like, no, we should teach it this way. But in the end, we got to where we needed to be. So I think one of the biggest lessons I learned this year was to trust the process, that the curriculum has been laid out the way it has been laid out for a specific reason. And even though you yourself personally don't know or understand that reason, you need to trust that the people who built it did a lot of research and they have a reason. And so in that part, I definitely was humbled back to reminding myself that it is okay to trust the curriculum, follow the curriculum pacing, and use the curriculum. And I will not say use the curriculum to fidelity because I do not think that that curriculum is a one-size-fits-all for students. But I do think that there is a time and a place for the activities that they are given. And I did this school year, I worked hard to make sure that I was using what I could, when I could, from the curriculum and pulled from my own teacher toolbox if I needed additional support. So, but lesson 4 was my own personal one. Like, these were very teacher focused. This one was my own personal. And that is perfectionism has no place when you're trying to grow, right? There's no room for growth when you're working towards perfectionism. Being a teacher for 18 years, being someone who is an instructional leader, who is used to being the team lead, who is used to be, giving teacher PDs about best instructional practices, I was not giving myself a lot of grace when it came to teaching a new subject that I haven't taught in a very long time. And I realized that strive for perfectionism, that the lesson should have been perfect, that the test scores should be perfect, that I should be perfect. Personally, me, that I should be perfect every day when I show up to class. I should be ready and rested and, I should have no problems because I am perfect. That literally just, by mid-year, we had to forget that. There was no place for perfectionism anymore. I needed to grow. And so once I let go of the idea of like what perfect anchor charts looked like, what perfect lesson plans looked like, what a perfect Instagram post looked like, I was able to find that I was able to grow a lot more. And that one, I think, was the personal one that I needed the most. All right. My last lesson that I learned this school year really is that it's okay to admit that things are hard. Okay, I'm gonna say that again. It is okay to admit when things are hard. There were many times this school year where I was scared to admit to myself, to my teammates, I did a co-teach, because I only taught math science, so I had a co-teacher, to admit to her that things were hard or I was struggling. Like, I found it very hard because I have held myself to such a high standard that I can handle anything. I can handle it, right? But that was not the case. I did not handle things very well at all. Just nobody knew because I was hiding and masking and, all that. But I found I needed to admit sometimes to myself and others that things were hard and that I was not okay. And that was hard to do. Because admitting that things are hard means that you're admitting you're not good at them. And like, I'm one of those people that I always say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, but I'm naturally good at like the things that come with teaching. I feel like, I don't say naturally, that's not true, but like I'm good at doing the teacher things, right? I enjoy doing it. I'm good. My principals have told me that I'm good. Like, this isn't just in my head. I've been told it for a very long time. And so I felt like because I wasn't doing good, I was failing. And that's not true. Just because you're not doing the best doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're growing and learning. And I wasn't necessarily scared of the growth. It made me question my confidence as a teacher in my grade level. And that was compounded by some personal issues that I also was having, not at home, but also at school. That was just kind of making me really doubt myself. And, feeling like, okay, I'm not doing great. I'm not reaching these students. That lesson didn't go well. Or this is so hard, like relearning this curriculum, or having to literally study the math book every week to know what you were teaching and look up videos on best practices to teach certain things that you're like, I should know how to do this. It was hard. It was hard. And I do wish that they were more like settled, confident moments within this school year, but I think that's going to be next school year. And I think the fact that I acknowledged it towards the end of the school year, that like this was tough, and that, like my student behavior was tough this school year. My, personal relationships with my teammates was tough this school year. My personal relationship with my family was tough. It was just a lot of tough things. And once I was able to like acknowledge it, I think it allowed me to show up more openly. Because I think the natural defense is, well, I'm not doing well. I don't want anyone to know, right? When you put yourself out there in the world, you don't want people to know, like, you might not be good at something. No one wants that. But I think once I realized, like, hey, I don't need to put up this wall, I was able to kind of like start moving towards it being easier.